Getting to know you, getting to know all about you, getting to like you, getting to hope you like me.
Getting to know them personally with interviews on Rock Made of Metal.
My name is Victoria Liedtke, and I am one half of the band Hey Hello with Ginger Wildheart.
Oh yeah, I've been there, like swimwear.
So tell us about the genesis of Hey Hello. From the sounds of it, it's just sounded something that happened. You almost fell into it in a sense.
Yeah, more or less. I had just recorded some vocals for Ginger's solo record, and over the course of those sessions, I think Ginger and I really found that we hit it off musically, and the idea to do a little side project was just something that kind of we talked about it here and there, and right off the back of finishing his solo album, we had a bit of time, and he very quickly cranked out these 10 demos and was like, "Hey, look, I have these songs. Let's do an album. By the way, we're called Hey Hello. Let's do it. Go." So it was very 1, 2, 3 songs.
So while you were making this album, what's really interesting is that you were both separated by the Atlantic Ocean. You were never in the same studio at the same time making this album. How challenging was it to kind of address your ideas?
It was definitely an exercise in, really kind of honing one's communication skills, particularly where the subtleties of music is concerned. And really, it was a lot of Skyping. It was a lot of Skyping and a lot of maybe something like this. Well, what do you mean by this? Well, okay, like this. You build sort of a common language where the sounds and the feel and, all those very important details of making a record, you really learn to develop a common language, which is what I think we did, hopefully successfully.
So Ginger Wildheart was in charge of musical arrangements such as guitars, drumming, and so on and so forth, while you were in charge of vocal arrangements. But since you didn't have direct access and you weren't recording in the same studio, I was curious if there was any kind of, times where you wanted to say to him, "Oh my god, this is so good," or "Oh my god, I want to change this." Or did you both just have kind of a natural process with each other where you kind of just bounced each other naturally, where you didn't have to be in the same studio?
It was, it was fairly natural. He originally sent me little demos that he kind of cranked out. So it was just from listening to those, I could kind of hear, just based on the way on what I know of the way Ginger writes music, he has a lot of Gingerisms in his songwriting. He likes the big choruses with the big stacked harmonies, and so there were places in each song where I was thinking okay, so obviously I'm going to do a big 3-part harmony here. Obviously this is going to have some voices here, there, and there. So I could see where he had kind of carved out the places for me to step in. So yeah, there wasn't a great deal of what do you want me to do with this? And I had some great people on my end in New York, my friends Brian Scarry and Giulio Carmassi helped me with some of the arrangements, as well as helped me throw down some extra little noises and instrumentation here and there. So,
Yeah, the gingerism, as you put it there, is definitely clear within this album, but it's a lot poppier than anything Ginger Wildheart has ever done before, and I think that's something that you really brought in with your vocals. But I still was left with the question of what you thought that you brought to this album. What influences did you think that you brought into this? What impact did you have on the making of this album?
Well, I mean, speaking in broad strokes, I brought kind of the girl element to the Ginger catalog, which is something, it's not like this is the first time he's used female backing vocals, but, I'd like to think that I brought a little bit of a sunnier side to kind of contrast with his big kind of chunky guitar sounds. And we wanted to kind of have that stark contrast between the sort of very boy oriented noises he makes with his guitars and the very ladylike noises I make with my voice. But yeah, I mean, I think there was, we wanted to play on that contrast, I think.
One of the strengths I would say about the self-titled album Hey Hello is how versatile your voice is, as it ranges from punk to pop and so on and so forth. I was just wondering your thoughts on something like that and how your voice was challenged on this record.
Well, I think throughout my life as a singer, I've never felt comfortable kind of remaining in one genre, mostly because it gets a little boring for me. I tend to insinuate myself into musical realms where maybe I have no business being, just because I love the challenge of, attempting a style of music that I haven't done before. And, that was something that really attracted me to working with Ginger, because I think as a songwriter, he really runs the gamut of various kind of pop music styles. And I like being stretched beyond what I'm used to singing. So it keeps me sharp.
Another thing that's different about this album compared to most other rock and metal albums, and it's an obvious difference granted, is the fact that it's so poppy. It's filled with a lot of pop influences, and rock bands and metal bands are usually really afraid to go anywhere near that sort of musical spectrum. I was just wondering, why do you think that is? I mean, why do you think this bands are so afraid to go anywhere near the pop genre for influences?
I am a big, I'm a big lover of pop, not just as a, just in terms of the stuff I listen to, but I think pop songwriting is something that is very undervalued. And I think it's very easy to write off a very classically perfect pop song as oh, that's just fluff, that's just silliness. There's a real skill and a real art form in crafting a song that makes you just, uncontrollably bouncy and happy. And it evokes a certain spirit that is, a very special thing. It's you think about ABBA songs, and ABBA's a good example because it's one that's not everyone will admit that they can't help but bop their head when they hear an ABBA track, but it's that's a thing. That's a very special power that pop has. And it's something to be embraced. I think there's a lot of rock out there that takes itself very, very seriously. And I think it's a little silly. Music, fundamentally, music's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be light. And, I think that there is no genre that is too precious and no, guys, we gotta keep this serious. There's a lot of heavy guitars, so, we better, I don't know, it should all be silly, and it should, I don't know.
The great thing about this album too, that it was completely funded by the fans through pledge funding. This was done mostly through Ginger Wildheart, as he's the one who really set it up, but I was just kind of wondering what your thoughts were on pledge funding, if it was something that you were in support of.
Absolutely. It's an exciting time for music because, you have these things like Kickstarter and pledge music that are sort of coming out of the woodwork. And in a lot of ways, it's taking music back to this almost kind of grassroots place where you are getting back to the sort of fundamental, incredibly important relationship between a band and the fans. There shouldn't be a middleman. And I think to put your fate as an artist in the hands of people who, not to be crass, the people who give a dish, I think is the way it should be. And I think it prevents these bands that are sort of completely supported by a label, but don't have the base of people that actually want to see the band continue to make records and want to go to the shows and cheer loudly, those should be the people in charge. And I think that's the most basic relationship a musician should have.
Again, another great thing, actually, I know I say that a lot, great thing, but it is a great thing, is literally how the support is paid off for you so much, because you got more money than what you wanted on pledge funding, as well as the album becoming #1 in the UK charts. I mean, how do you feel about kind of the love and support given to you by the fans of Hey Hello?
I mean, it's overwhelming. It's real. Obviously incredibly flattering, but it's encouraging because it means great, we can continue to do this, you know, like to make over our target amount. It's like, great, we can put that towards like the next thing for this band. And like, we have people that want to see us continue to do stuff with Hey Hello. And like, that's the most encouraging thing you can ever hear. So it's great.
So obviously with the support that you've gained for this album, it kind of leads into the question of the focus that was being put into Hey Hello. At this point, it isn't really much of a main focus. It's more of a side project that you and Ginger Wildheart just kind of started on the fly and see how it went. But considering the amount of feedback that you've got, and positive feedback at that, is this something that's going to become more of a main focus in the future for you guys?
It's definitely something that we want to, you know, we want to continue doing something with it. At this point in time, seeing as though the band isn't so much a band as it is Ginger and myself and some recording equipment, I think the next stage is ideally trying to get a few people in a room to maybe learn a couple songs and play a couple shows. I mean, that's what we're hoping the next step would be. At this moment, I'm in the studio now with Ginger, recording his solo record with him, so there's like a little bit of focus on that at this moment. But you know, Ginger likes to juggle, so
yeah, I again, like, you know, as you were just saying there, obviously like the focus is when you're going to bring in some new people and whatnot, and obviously this is a long looking into the future right now, of which you may not even have discussed at this point really. But do you kind of have like a vague idea like of who's going to be coming into the studio then, of like who that you would want to bring into the studio?
There have been names thrown around. It will all kind of depend on like where, you know, like where we end up playing shows first, you know, like who can get in a car and come over in 20 minutes. No, I mean, there's been talk, but there hasn't been like heavy focus put on, you know, we haven't started the cattle call auditions. No.
So kind of last real serious question, and I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of one I have to ask really. I love you guys. Are you coming to the UK anytime soon?
Oh gosh. Well, I think we would be silly to not do UK shows, but yeah, watch this space, definitely. I'm certain that something will definitely materialize in the near future.
And just one last fun question at the end, because hey, why not? I mean, you've had like a lot of really serious interview questions. I might as, you know, having one really fun interview question just to make everybody smile. What kind of superpower would you have, Victoria Liedtke?
Ooh, any kind of superpower. Here we go. The ability to talk to animals. There we go. So, I don't know. Maybe it's just like something deep down in my heart and soul that I have such an affinity for little friends, and I'm like a small child in that way. Hi, this is Victoria, one half of the band Hey Hello, and you're listening to Rock Made of Metal.